Coté. So about it's been maybe 3 weeks ago, I was in Costa Rica. I was there to the keynote KCD Costa Rica, and I got interviewed for a podcast.
Oh.
And they were like, what do you think about AI? And I'm just like, oh, I'm so tired of hearing about AI, which is my general spiel.
Uh-huh.
I'm sick. Will we ever stop talking about this? Oh my God. And then 1 week later, so about 2 weeks ago, I started using Cursor for the first time.
Oh, yes.
And I have turned a 180. I have thought of little else except AI for the last 2 weeks.
You've got the AI virus, the fever. I don't even know what it is.
I have it so bad.
Well,
I need to be hospitalized.
that is, so. I don't know. Did you call back the podcast and be like, "Hey, sorry about that. I see why you wanted to talk about this. Can we re-record that?"
The episode did just come out, and I was just like, "Oh, Whitney, little do you know what's about to happen."
Well, I've been telling you, asking for a while that we should record an episode about this, because I remember maybe it was 2 weeks ago or something, but like you told me a similar thing, and you're like, I started using Cursor or ChatGPT. And now I have my little friend here I can talk with. I don't need to talk with anyone else ever again. It's not exactly.
And then I never texted you after that, did I? That was the last message in our chat history forever.
That's right. And I thought the similar side of you is like, oh my God, Whitney has discovered AI. Like I need to before the shine wears off and it's no longer scientifically interesting, I need to get her take on everything about it, because it'll be great. Always your own in a great way, unique insight on things, and maybe you can help me figure out using it for various things, because I just use the apps. Well, that's not exactly true, but I've never used Cursor or any of these things. I use a little bit of like which one? I think both Claude and ChatGPT can work with IntelliJ, maybe just one, but that's the extent of my like super coding stuff.
When you told me, I'm not gonna lie, when you told me you were getting back into coding with Spring, I totally thought that was because you discovered AI coding, but that wasn't. You're just really doing it.
Well, no, I use it to help me. My point is that I don't use Cursor or.
Oh, you're like going back and forth from the chat bot. Okay.
Yeah, and you can have OpenAI like integrate. I don't even know what it's called, but it can control IntelliJ. So there's integrations, and I think Claude does that. And so, but it's not like embedded. It's really weird. It's like as if I were a passenger in the back of a seat, and then I was talking to like the chauffeur's boss, and then the chauffeur radios to the chauffeur who's sitting right in front of me, and then they drive me somewhere.
Sounds efficient.
but no, it is like that's the I mean, maybe that's the summary. I'm doing all the my view on this stuff here, but that's my kind of what would you call it? My positive turns out counter take on AI stuff is like, yeah, like I've been trying to relearn programming for like 15, 20 years, and I can't get all of these super DevRel nerds to teach me. But now I got this little buddy, this brilliant dummy in my pocket.
It doesn't mind my annoying personality.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, I want to hear your experience of like, so like what, like, let's start at the beginning. Why did you just download it and install it? Like what happened? What motivated you?
Well, I'm working on building a platform engineering course. And I think similar to you, I want to build like a platform demo from end to end using open source projects, but that's a big lift. And especially, I know a lot about all the projects, but I don't use them in a hands-on way all the time. So it's a little bit intimidating from that point of view too.
Yeah.
So this is like a use case. I want to be able to build like efficiently time-wise, and then good practices, have something or someone verify good practices while I do a build. And this sounds like a good use case for UI.
Yep.
So the first thing I need to do is make a demo app though. So the first thing I'm starting with is just like making an application. What it is, well, first things first. So I download Cursor on a Friday, and I know enough to know that there's a lot you can do and a lot I don't know. Like I know you can add MCP servers for additional capability. I know you can train little buddies within your little buddies. Like you can make cursor agents, or I forget what they're called, which I haven't even explored that yet. But I decided on Friday, I'm going to play with this for the weekend. And then on Monday, I'll start adding MCP servers. For now, I just want to understand what baseline cursor does. So I can, before I know myself, and I know I like a little bit of information at a time, and I want to fully digest that before I pull in the next bit of information. So that was my strategy for the weekend.
Yeah, just nice macrobiotic Casa de Luz style, just slowly bringing it in.
Exactly.
You don't want the El Presidente or El Jefe plate all at once.
It's true. You have to work up that lactose tolerance. And so after playing it with it for the weekend, I used React, which is the React node, which is what I did in coding school 5 years ago. So like something I kind of knew, but was really rusty. And then I made a demo app that I'm going to build my platform engineering demo around. And the demo app is just, it's an image of a rainbow, and there's a button that says add spider ? And you click it, and then there's a spider on the rainbow. And then the button changed to remove spider, and then you click it again and the spider is gone.
I feel like if you trained one of these AI models on all your stuff, that would be exactly the app that would predict you would make.
But there's an Easter egg where sometimes, like 21 out of 20% of the time when you click the button, it fills your whole screen with spiders, and then there's a new button that says, ah! And you click that one and you're back to a rainbow. Very sophisticated, deep engineering work going on here. But the weekend was very exciting. It was so cool to be able to easily like get back to what I had done and kind of understand what's going on. But I was putting guardrails on, like having it slow down and explain things, what it was doing, as opposed to just rushing ahead. And I didn't, and still maybe don't have an easy time trusting it. I want to understand. But I started doing a few things without any MCP servers. I was asking it to look up documentation a lot, or keeping documentation open. I was also trying to get it to remember my preferences. Like, so I had like a preferences document. Yeah. Or like remember context.
Does it do that well?
Well, now I know that there are cursor rules that are good for your preferences, but also it's, if you wanted to hold on to context in between sessions, which is another thing I was trying to do. There's a way to do that with an MCP server, which we'll talk about. But first I was building homegrown solutions. I was making this preferences.md file. I also made like a markdown file of here's what I'm working on right now, and here's what step we're on. So I could keep, the AI wants to, everything it does for you. It's also, do you also want this added functionality? And if you're not careful, you'll keep saying yes, and then you're building something totally different than what you meant to build. And so I had a plan to keep pointing myself and the thing to look at my plan. And again, it was just a markdown document. So those are the things. Oh, and then for my own, since I'm learning, and also in general, in engineering, you're like in a moment and you follow a thread, and it's easy to get lost in the details and lose sight of a bigger picture. So I was also trying to make like keep an engineering journal as part of the process and use AI for that. And that just wasn't happening. It was happening, but I think I spent 50% of the time trying to keep track of what I was doing, and 50% of the time actually doing stuff that first weekend.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I like that. Huh.
But yeah. And so on Monday, when I went to look at MCP servers, that's when I found, oh, there's the one called Context 7 that will look up the documentation that gives you up-to-date documentation for whatever you're working with, so you're not behind. There's one called Memory Server where you can keep the context between sessions. You have to tell it what to remember, but if you want to remember something short-term, there are cursor rules to remember long things like this. I always want to work like this. I'm always doing test-driven development. I always want to write failing tests. I want to run those tests to see that they're failing for the right reason, and then I want to write code.
Yeah.
Because if you just say test-driven development, it'll write the tests and then not run them and then do the implementation. And you're like, no, it has no common sense. And then
those things are interesting because like when it comes to programming, I only use AI stuff. I don't know how to characterize it. I don't do it that sophisticated. It's more just like, how would I write some code that does this? Not like a grand project. So it doesn't really have to have too much of a memory. Like the only preference that I give it is I tell it that the last time I programmed Java was in 2005. And so it should explain how things are different. And that part's kind of fun. Like it has some character to be like, for older people, it doesn't say for older people like yourself. This may seem a little weird, but let me explain to you. But yeah, that
explain
idea,
like I'm a grandpa.
Yeah, that idea of like, I never thought of that idea of help me remember what's the name of that phenomena where like you walk into a room and you forget why you went in there, and then you walk out and you remember. It's like the similar thing of like, help me remember why I came into this room 5 hours ago.
What am I doing here? Who am I? So all this MCP sort of stuff, Context 7, Memory Server, and then I found one, this is my favorite one, called Taskmaster. And so you could say, here's what I want to make, a big grand thing. And Taskmaster will break it up into smaller tasks for you. And it'll prioritize like which tasks are dependencies on which other tasks. Then when you're ready to work on a specific task, right now I'm working on task 4, adding OpenTelemetry. When you're doing that, then you can break that task into subtasks. You can make implementation plans for each task. So it really helps you keep a bigger picture and stay organized with what you're doing and on point with what you're doing.
Does it just like generate that original plan and then like you tell it which one you're on and it just tells you what's in it? Like how does it? What is it doing?
What I did, we're jumping ahead a little bit. I'm going to finish my thread and then I'm going to Taskmaster complete this task and then we can open the next Taskmaster task. And then finally, what I didn't find and what I wanted was an MCP server to help with engineering journaling. And so I decided to build one in Python, which I've never touched in my life.
Right.
So that's been truly what I've been obsessed with for the last 2 weeks is building this MCP server. I haven't been working on my platform engineering demo. I'm building this MCP server, but I love it. I'm having so much fun.
You walked into the room and you're like, that area that's a door, I need that for my project. So I'm going to cover that up.
To be clear, I didn't understand what a big project I was taking on when I was like, oh, it should be easy to generate some journal entries about what I'm doing. And maybe it would be if I didn't insist on, I want TDD and I want to understand and I want this to be like a real piece of software that's useful for others too.
Yeah. And so, okay. So what is I think I understand. I mean, the engineering journal, as it would say, is like you keep track of what you're doing and your ideas, but like, I assume you don't just type that and it stores it in a file somewhere. There's probably something more sophisticated going on. Like what's going on with it?
So it's triggered by a Git commit. And then once you make that Git commit, it pulls in context from 3 different places. So like your Git diffs and code changes and commit name, it pulls in from your the AI executed terminal command history. And it also pulls in your AI chat. So it knows what you've been discussing.
Oh, right. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So the engineering journal is now able to capture what choices you made and why, and what questions you asked, and also like what mood. Like, are you grumpy? Are you happy? Are you like mad at it for making the same mistake for the
Right.
seventh time in a row?
It's analyzing you interacting with the chat session.
Yes.
Yeah. I told you I want to run the test.
For the love of God. That will make it into your journal, by the way. So it pulls, so for each commit, you have a journal entry. All those journal entries go into one file. Your first Git commit on the next day, you'll get a summary for what you did the day before. Which has also been actually a lovely way for me to be like, hey, look at yesterday's summary, but to prepare for today's work, so you know where we're at.
Right.
And then on the first commit of a new week, you get a weekly summary. On the first commit of a new month, you get a monthly summary, and then quarterly, and then yearly. I haven't gotten that far, or even monthly, obviously.
And then is it like summarizing the summaries? How did?
I think so. I haven't implemented that part, but I think I'm going to have it summarize the summaries. And then it has, you could also add manual reflection. So sometimes in the middle of something, I think of a thing way over here that I want to do, and I just make it like add reflection. Go check on this later, and then it'll bubble up into my journal. And then it's also been instructed to keep bubbling up to summaries when it's interesting. So I can have a quick way to jot down notes and where it's being able to find those notes later and keep it with my brain. Yeah.
And so is the next step to interleave like the nutritional information and sleep data that you have?
I'm not one of those people, believe it or not, but sure, I could see someone wanting to do that. What was my heart rate while I was coding? How excited was I? Where's my pH? Yeah, how much cortisol? Take a blood sample.
Yeah, because I think this kind of thing could easily extend into I built this for programming, and now it runs my life. Or not, run is the wrong word, but now it includes a journaling of all the activities I have in my life, summarized on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually basis.
Auto summarizes things I care about. Sure, I don't want to make that, but if someone wants to extend, I'm here for it. But I do think it's good for, besides being good for self-reflection and being good to understand what's happening at your project at a higher level, I think I'll personally use it probably to for storytelling, like for blog posts or conference talks, to kind of get an idea, especially with the emotion that's captured, like understanding like what's interesting or where there might be a story. And also even like asking for promotions or keeping track when you have to do quarterly retrospectives and you're like, wait, what did I do? I have no idea. I have to look at my calendar to try to remember. And you'll have that at your fingertips.
So that's because, if at least in this instance, you're doing all this work through Cursor. Yeah. You've got an MCP server there. And I assume you register, I forget the terminology, but you configure your journaling MCP server with Cursor. And it just kind of sits there figuring out when it should call out to it to do something, essentially. Right?
It's triggered by a Git hook, so it doesn't have to.
Oh, right. So
it's programmatically triggered.
Right.
Yeah.
And then so to your point, you're kind of spying on yourself. Spying is the wrong word. You're logging all of your activity. And all of the professional activity that happens through that app. And so you could. That's a fun idea of. Find the emotional things that I did, and that's a good story.
Yeah. It captures technical things too, and statistics and decisions, but I want it to get the emotion. I've told a few people about this idea now, and some people have the reaction of like, oh yeah, I want that. Like I do lose track of like what I'm doing and why, and I have no idea what I did last week or why, let alone yesterday, let alone earlier today. But then I also have some people who are like, oh no, I don't want to be observed, or like, oh, I'd start talking to Cursor totally differently if I knew I was being watched. Like now I'm going to say please and thank you and stuff. No one said they're going to say please and thank you, but and so I don't know. Maybe some people will avoid it, and that's okay.
How about you? Do you find yourself talking to it differently?
No, not at all.
No. Yeah. So you have a very, this is like a tool that I'm using sort of stance. No mystical magicness to it. Where like something strange is going to happen. I need to be polite.
Well, I'm like, my brain and mind and soul are all naturally kind. For a while before I figured out which model I like and why, and I was just letting it use auto mode. Sometimes it would suck and I didn't understand why. Now I do. And I would just use Claude on the side so I would use Cursor to make changes, but then go to the side to have technical conversations in a Claude chat. And then Cursor kept making mistakes and getting in a circular pattern, trying to fix those mistakes. And I knew it was wrong. And I brought the problem into Cursor and I said, hey, not Cursor, Claude. And I was like, hey, Claude, give me a prompt to give to Cursor to help break this cycle and help fix the problem. And then the prompt that Claude gave me had a lot of like, stop doing that. It's clearly not productive. Like it was kind of mean. And I was just totally to Claude. I was like, there's no need to be rude about it. And really spit out a nicer prompt that I could go put into Cursor, but not because I thought I was being watched or anything, just because like, oh, it makes me uncomfortable to like treat another sentient seeming human in an unkind way.
Did they both work just as well? Like the mean and the kind prompts?
Oh, I don't know because I didn't put a mean one in. I couldn't let that represent me.
So you were saying you figured out like the using the right model is important. So like what model did you end up using for your code?
So I used the Anthropic, the Claude, but within Cursor as opposed to switching it back and forth, which is better because since I'm making an engineering journal, I want all my thoughts to be worked out in the AI chat within Cursor because that's getting captured. If I go and do it on the side, I'm defeating the whole point.
Right. Like you're seeing this therapist that doesn't integrate into the rest of your life over here.
Exactly.
You don't bring these two together. So do you think like, okay, do you spend like, what's the ratio of time you spend like, let's just say coding versus like talking about stuff, right? Like how do you think that pans out between your usage or in your usage?
I think I literally haven't written with my fingers a line of code.
What I mean is so you're talking in both of them, but it's just sort of like, write me something that opens a file versus like, why would I write a file that way? Right? Like you could kind of like have that discussion versus like you're doing the work of programming.
My discussion is maybe 50-50 around what technical decisions are we making and why, and explain to me what's happening. And then the other 50% is like efficient workflow and test-driven development. And do we have coverage for this or that sort of process-oriented? And then there's a good amount of, since I'm just like, oh, here's a design flaw. And let's, like, for example, figuring out a ways into it that I need to be careful not to make journals about journal commits, or it's going to be recursive. Yeah. And so then having to kind of refactor forward and back, like what I've done, and then also everything in the plan coming forward if I need to make sure that's gone. So, so sometimes there's just like, oh, I'm going to change the design slightly. I'm going to change the way my directories are structured. And to do that is going to take a little bit of communication.
All right. So yeah. Okay. The next thing that's making me think of is like, how would you put this? The comfort with the scope of what your little buddy is doing. So like I haven't really used the Claude Code thing where I guess I used it once to see what it does, where you just like create this whole application for me, right? But it seems really weird. That's a big step from like write me this method, and like you're saying, so it sounds like you've grown to be comfortable with like, oh, we need to go restructure the directories and go rewrite this thing, and then even before that, having it write unit tests for you, that seems a little weird too. So what am I trying to ask here? Like, how do you get comfortable with the level of control and scope that you give it? How do you figure that out?
I think I have a good understanding of what's already happened in my code base, what I've made. I do feel ownership over it. And I have less of an understanding of what's coming up. But as I make it, that's when I'll understand it. So it's more like I have a big picture idea of what I want to build. I sussed it out into an engineering spec first before I ever brought it into Cursor, which we could talk about. And then I brought that spec in, and then I let Taskmaster make tasks around it. And so all of that was like pretty opaque to me about how it was going to work. It wasn't that opaque, but still, I didn't have my hands dirty with code yet. I wasn't used to looking at it. It was still very conceptual. I understood like what boxes I want to talk to other boxes, but I didn't know what that was going to actually look and feel like. And then in building it, asking a lot of questions and making sure I understand and using test-driven development to make sure it doesn't like just make stuff up and I'm not building on poor foundations. And to establish some trust that I have for Cursor. And then, does that answer your question?
Yeah. Because I think the first thing is, so one, you started with a big picture of what you wanted, a spec, right? Like I want it to look like this, and then I guess the thing about the Taskmaster, what it's doing for you there is taking that big picture. I'm gonna use a bunch of not weird cliche terms here, and then breaking it into tasks and you haven't really even thought about like, well, then I need to do these tasks, and then ordering it. So you've got this kind of like iterative, like, let's put together a project plan of the things you think you need to do. And then I imagine as you work on it, you can have it go back and reassess what needs to happen. Based on
right. Yeah. That's when I'm strengthening my understanding and figuring out the smaller details. And
right. And so the productivity there being, if you're comfortable with it, you don't really have to decide what to do next. You can just kind of like go along with the plan and just like, oh, now I'm going to work on this thing next. And now I'm going to work on this thing next, which could be great or bad, but that is project management takes a lot of effort, just planning what to do.
Yeah. And so when I made the engineering spec, not knowing a lot yet about MCP servers and my own implementation, the engineering spec included a specification to have a CLI tool. And then as I was building it and understanding more and noticed the CLI tool coming up, I was like, wait, how would that work? Because this tool 100% relies on the context of the AI chat. And if a human was using a CLI and a terminal, then having this interface doesn't make any sense. And then asking like, does this make sense? And then the AI is saying, oh no, actually it doesn't make any sense. And then refactoring to lose it. But like, I didn't know enough to catch that while it was being made. But I do trust that as everything unfolds and things that are kind of wrong like that, or the direct recursive journaling that could happen, those things I'll catch them in the moment, that I'll notice in the moment that they don't make sense.
Well, so this is a little thing to burrow down on.
Okay.
Maybe there's not a word for this, but I think you've hit on like the what would you call it? I don't know what you call it, but like the big fear of AI stuff, which is, it'll be wrong. But
which is founded. That's a real fear, and you should have it.
Right. Which is, and I guess to generalize it, it's a classic question of a tool of like when. Let me see if I can frame this as I talk in a way that makes sense. Like one of the big questions you have with a tool is, there's some danger to this tool, but does the user know how to operate it safely enough such that it doesn't really matter, right? And so, for example, in this example, the danger of the tool, ridiculously low stakes as it is that you would have tried to implement this like CLI or something that didn't fit into the scheme of things because it was wrong, right? But but you had the wherewithal to be like, you're doing great work over here, but this is not correct, right? To catch that. And like, I think like when I see that in my non-programming stuff with AI, like a lot of what I do is like writing and playing around and entertainment and things like that. But you do develop the talent, the skill to say you're wrong about that, and then point it out to it. And so like, I guess like I think about the possibility, because they're never interested, but my kids using AI stuff more, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of figuring out, I guess what I'm trying to get at is like that skill of like spotting and calling bullshit
Mm-hmm.
seems like the more important thing than worrying about like, is AI terrible or not, right?
Yeah.
Because once you can do that, it's kind of fine, right? Like you
Uh-huh.
just get over all of your it's wrong and hallucinating problems.
Uh-huh. So the test-driven development is part, and then I do call bullshit plenty. But there's also something that sometimes makes me feel safe if we're in a domain that I particularly don't understand, is again to like copy paste an important file, the server.py file, and feed it to Claude and say, hey, does this look good? Does this sound logic? And just have
To get a second opinion.
get a second opinion, yeah, about big things, just to make sure we're on solid foundation.
Do you ever have your whole engineering journal? Get a second opinion on that? Like,
How's this human doing?
that's right, right. Or like to compare, like, how would you have rated this session? Like, is this like like you get two analyses going on, analyses or whatever? Like I remember this is a couple years ago now, but one of the papers I read about early on people using like ChatGPT or whatever to play D&D. But basically what they set up is whenever you have an NPC or a monster encounter, you have one AI say what it's going to do, and then you pass that on to another AI and be like, what do you think of this? And then they kind of like reconcile into like something in between them, right? And so there's this interesting idea of like competing robots, but then like but then once you have it's like a get rid of the small monkeys by bringing in the bigger monkeys problem, right? Where like, so now that you have these two things, maybe you need a third thing to look at them and figure out like if they're
see the solution from there.
and on and on and on.
Yeah. That's when you get into don't let perfect be the enemy of good territory.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. But I'm learning so much, and in the competing AI zone. Well, there's a couple things so I've also been using ChatGPT or Claude more heavily, and when I say or, kind of pitting them against each other. Just today, I was writing a blog post that's going to be how I use Gen AI to make talk abstracts that don't suck, because I've been watching other people make talk. A lot of people ask me for feedback on their talk abstract, which is great, but there's so many Gen AI tells, like people hand me one and I just can't even like look at it, because you clearly I think you gave one sentence to ChatGPT and there's no way that's going to get accepted. And I even like created a list of AI tells that I just could copy paste to different people to be here's the problem with your abstract. So I came up with a series of prompts to go through to help you suss out an idea and make a talk outline and write an abstract that's good and not an AI abstract. But the point of that is, the last thing is take your abstract and have a different model, if you can, role play as a program committee member for the conference that you want to submit to. Give that AI your abstract, and then ask them whether you should get into the conference.
Oh yeah.
and if not, why? Yeah.
Do you feed them like the CFP text, kind of the overview of the stuff?
Ideally, yeah. I mean, I just in my prompts, because it's a blog post, I just say look it up. I'm submitting to KubeCon. Go look up KubeCon and see what's been accepted there. Understand how competitive it is, and then tell me if you would accept this particular abstract.
Well, so what are the tells is too specific of a word, but what is that intuition you have when you read one of these things that like, oh, an AI wrote this? Because like, I don't know if I could really explain it, but like, yeah, it's pretty easy to read this stuff. Like, and
it is like a feeling, right? First and foremost. For me, I think it has to do with like long sentences that are really dense with meaning.
Okay.
In terms of just a smell, that's like the first smell I get. But then it's like, and of course, M dashes is the one that everyone knows. Yes. And then there's AI loves to use two adjectives when one would suffice. And
Okay. Right.
and then similarly, it loves groups of threes. So and so M dashes, two adjectives, just groups of threes, like all of that adds up to long sentences that are dense with information. Really, there's just a more specific way to say the same thing.
Yeah.
It loves to add a bullet list to your abstract. Here's what you'll learn. Bullet list. Yeah. And then I even have seen enough of them that certain sentence patterns, like whether you're this or this, you're going to learn this. Like you just, you just get, yeah.
Yeah. Like I think the M dash thing drives me crazy. I just want to get rid of like all M dashes and smart quotes. I never want to see those again. And I tell it over and over again, don't give me M dashes.
Yeah.
And I'll even be like, I hate M dashes. I don't like them. They make me sad. And then it just
and then no, not working. Yeah.
Huh. Well, so have you gotten to the point yet where someone sends you a talk abstract and you just send it to your little buddy and then send them the reply?
My process is more involved than that. So similar to writing the engineering spec, what I've learned about AI, and maybe this is similar to your D&D experience, but like I love to have AI ask me questions. So the first stage, I guess, of the engineering spec or of the talk abstract is let's work out the idea. Ask me a series of questions. Build one idea off of another. Let's iterate, like find what's interesting and important, and being clear that my final output is a talk outline or my final output is an engineering spec. With the engineering spec, I went through and answered a lot of questions about what I want my journal to be and what I want it to be like. And then I got a spec, and that was from ChatGPT. And then I took that engineering spec and I brought it into Claude and asked and told it to do the exact same thing. And then we added a lot to it. I think ChatGPT, and maybe this feels true to their models, like ChatGPT was more interested in a high level or how it's going to perform or like what I wanted to actually do. And then when I brought it into Claude was way more interested in like what technology are we going to use? Like what's the architecture going to be? Like how are we going to build this MCP server? What should the different tools to register be? Yeah.
Huh. What do you, if you were to generalize with those two characterizations, what do you think's going on there? As far as their character,
in my mind, Claude is more technical, and ChatGPT is better at storytelling and like emotion or words.
That's interesting. Yeah, Claude always seems like the more human one. I don't know.
You think so?
I've noticed. Well, so like. For like a little bit of my usage, right? So ever since ChatGPT seems to be using its like memory more, and like has a lot more, like it's got this mode of memory that's basically like, who knows what it's doing in the back end, but it'll just show you like a list of strings of things that it's remembered, which it's had for a while. But now supposedly, and I say supposedly because I don't know how it works. I mean, it has this, but like. Now it somehow gets context from other chats that you've had with it. Just whatever, right? And like, for the past couple of months, like I feel like it's gotten to be a lot more like personalized to me. Like it knows things, and not in a spooky way, because I don't get spooked out by this very much, but it more knows the kind of conversations that I want to have because it remembers things that I've done in the past. Whereas Claude doesn't really do that. But Claude has remained like consistent in the like character that it is because it doesn't have this evolving relationship with me, I guess.
I don't enjoy ChatGPTs. I mean, in some ways it's convenient to be able to be like, oh, you know how I like to do this, and I don't have to find that chat. So in those moments I like it. But in general, I don't like how it panders to me. Like it uses my ASCII emojis that I like. Like I don't at me.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable. Not because I know it's a robot and it's trying to trick me into loving it.
Yeah. Huh, that's true. Yeah, it does. I use do you use the I think Claude just turned this on, but I don't know if it has it everywhere. But do you use the speech thing? You ever just like sit there?
I
And talk
haven't
with it?
yet, but it would.
Well,
Does
we'll
it
have to record
talk
an
back or
episode
does
on
it
that.
write back? Yeah.
So there's two modes you can do. One of them is just like well, it talks back at you. One of them is like you can talk to it, it listens, and then it like thinks for a little bit, and then it plays a file of the sound it generated. I mean, it wrote something out and it plays it to you. Right.
Okay.
And then you can stop it talking and then talk, but you wait and then it'll wait for a reply from you, which is fine. That's what it had for the first couple of years. But then I forget what they call it, but they have this new mode where you can interrupt it. And so you start talking with it and it'll start talking and be like, no, that's not what I want. Let's what do you mean by this thing? And so it's a lot different because you could let it talk for maybe not 5 minutes. You could let it talk for 3 minutes in response, or it could be more like a podcast where you just interrupt and the conversation goes everywhere around. And so that mode is also more personable, I find. Like it really kind of like with your ASCII stuff, it starts to mimic the way that I talk a lot, and which is fine. Like, for example, a lot of the times I'll say, what would be a silly example? Like, I've been learning how to fry eggs, and it seems like there are so many different ways to fry an egg. Can you give me some advice? And it would be like, yeah, there are a lot of ways to fry eggs, and it'll have little size and breaths and like things like that. Like it can get a little spooky every now and then. In that sense that it's very human. But it picks up on like ways that you like to talk and jokes you want to make, even like little breaths here and there. And it's kind of phenomenal in that respect. So I wonder if you applied that to coding, like, would it eventually end up sounding like a super nerd, like doing programming?
Can you tell it not to make those pauses? Like sometimes I'm like, hey, I'm using you for efficiency and you're adding an awful lot of fluff. Not to mention you're charging me by the token. And all the ways you're blowing smoke up my ass right now, you're also charging me for.
I would
don't need
imagine
them.
so. You could. I think maybe that's I forget how, but yeah, you could just turn off all that stuff. But you could. I don't really want to experiment with it because I kind of like it blowing smoke up my ass.
Feels good.
but I'm sure you could tune it to the style that you wanted. And that first voice mode, right? It doesn't really have all this personality to it. Like it has a tiny bit, but it's not quite. It's more just like what's the word? Like sterile, surgical, just more like computer, right? Like which is probably more of what we're looking for there.
What I'm putting together is sometimes when people are too nice to me in real life, I'm also suspicious of them. It's not just the AI. I'm like, exactly. What do you want from me? I have nothing of value.
You want to eat more tokens. That's so like you said, you made. What do you think about the model context protocol stuff? What's your opinion, just off the top about MCP stuff? Freaking
amazing.
Yeah.
What other opinion is there? It's amazing.
So there's at least three aspects of potential amazingness. One, like the first one with any technology, as we all know, is that like it actually gets used widely, right? So like, so you could have, I'm sure there's many other, there's several, and there are other agent specs, but they don't get widely used, so they're not amazing, right? Like no matter how nicely they're done. And then there's also just like, you could also say like the thinking that goes through like, I forget what they call it, the concepts, the various parts of it. You could be, I think you would use a phrase like, oh, it's a very elegant specification, right? Very well thought out. And then, and then I guess you could have a third thing that was just like, what you can accomplish with it is great. Like the implementation almost, but I don't know.
The pluggability and the way that you can make your cursor or whatever, your agent extensible for exactly what you need it to do and nothing more, nothing less is great. And the way you can, like sometimes it's pretty internal, like Taskmaster or the journal tool I'm making, it doesn't really need to reach out to the wider world. But then there are MCP servers that are completely like a Argo CD one, or that can like reach out to your Datadog instance and pull in certain information in real time. so it can like bring the outside world into your IDE when you want it in a really smart way. It's just, it's amazing. Right. Yeah.
So like what it can accomplish is fantastic.
Yeah.
Right? And do you do more than just write tools? Do you like do prompts or resources, or is it only tools that you do?
Well, part of writing tools, like a lot of the work I've done has gone into crafting the prompts to make really good journal entries consistently.
I mean, well, okay, so maybe, yeah. But, like in MCP, there's like a tool, a prompt, and a resource, right? There's like these distinct things. And like, I haven't really come across people doing anything other than
the tools. I've only done the tools. Yeah. I don't really understand why or how I would use the prompts, honestly.
Yeah. Like my understanding, and maybe you can go look for me, or I should just look. Maybe the problem with prompts, the MCP prompts, is I think it's all an implementation problem in that I don't know if any MCP client, Cursor in this case, or when I use it, Claude Desktop, actually like has a good implementation of how you do a prompt. And then the whole distinction of a prompt, I think, is supposed to be, so a tool is something that our little buddy decides to do, right? And you could tell it to do it, right? You could say like, write this journal thing, but in theory, it should autonomously figure out if it's going to do it. Whereas a prompt, it's like Whitney tells it to do it directly. Like you click on something, you type something in, and it should execute, right? And that's kind of the idea of what a prompt is. And it's more about like who executes the tool and who executes the prompt. And so and this is also probably maybe why no one ever does it. It's just like, why wouldn't I just use a tool for that?
Yeah. Like, or I use a tool sends it to my prompt, and like the data is structured to my prompt, and then my prompt outputs data that's structured in a way that I want it. So why do I need a prompt at the server level? I don't understand. And then it's also
confusing because the way you interact with the stuff is through a whole other thing called a prompt, which is
which is a different kind of prompt. I don't
like so the maybe and maybe to talk through it more. So the way in Claude Desktop that they implement prompts is basically you have to go click on, you have your MCP prompts configured in it. And so normally when you're typing in Claude, I don't know how Cursor does this, but like, for example, I'll have an MCP tool that creates what mood an NPC is in. So if we're playing our little adventure, it's like, oh, Sven the gnome sees like a big dwarf or just a big human going down the road. And then it'll stop and it'll call out to the NPC motivation tool.
Okay.
And, I have it do this little thing where whenever it calls to an MCP tool, one of the parameters I have it pass in is like, I guess I confusingly call it the context, but I call it the question context. And I tell it, like, tell me why you're calling this, like what's going on. And so you can see when you trace through the logs, it's like, oh, I need to figure out what mood this human is in. So it calls the NPC motivation thing, which closes that loop, but it does that all on its own, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't tell it figure out what the motivation is. It just figures it out. Whereas, so the prompt, so that's what the interface in Claude is for a tool. Whereas a prompt, you go down to the bottom and you click on this little plus sign, and it lists like, there's no drop downs anymore in UIs, but it like lists all the prompts that you have.
Okay.
And so, for example, I have a prompt that's like bootstrap the adventure prompt, right? And so you would click bootstrap the adventure, it's a terrible interface, and then it pops up this stupid little, it's not stupid. I mean, it was just very quickly done. What you do with the prompt, so with the tool, you specify the parameters that go into the tool, right? And a prompt, you also specify the parameters, but then when the Claude Desktop thing pops it up, each of those parameters is a field that I, the human, can fill out, right? So so for example, on my startup thing, I have like anything you want to tell the AI, right?
So you see a form when you choose the right prompt.
Yes. It gives you a form that has all the parameters, and you can fill it out if you want. And then, when you click go, it of course calls all the way back to your prompt tool. But my prompt, all it does is read a text file and send that back and append the part that I had, because I don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And I guess this is why it's called a prompt, is it sends that as a prompt to Claude. Right? So, and the prompt is just like, we're playing D&D. You have these tools available to you. Like, do this. It's like instructions to it.
Yeah.
And so that's what a prompt does. But again, you could do all sorts of other stuff rather than just reading a file and sending it back to it. So like in the spec, there's an example of like a prompt could be a command, like a slash command, like you would type like, / like get something. And I think there's even like auto completion handling in it. So you could auto complete what the commands are. Anyhow, I spent a lot too much time looking at that because I don't think anyone's ever going to do anything with it. So
no. Well, so in my journal tool, one thing you can do is add a reflection. So in my mind's eye, you just say in the chat, I'd like to add a reflection, and then you write down whatever manual thing that's not related to your Git commit is, just like a note you want to make. But that might be a good use case for a prompt. But I don't know, like, why add that complexity if you could just say add a reflection.
Yeah,
to the chat.
I think I had never finished listening to it, but there's an interview with two of the MCP people, and I think their reasoning was that, I don't know the words you have for this, but the distinction between the reason they have a tool, a prompt, and a resource is pretty much just for, do people still say affordances in programming? Is just for UI affordances, just so that you would know to pop a form up. I don't know, something like that.
It seems like there's got to be a use case where a form is good, where you want that kind of structure, to impose that structure on something coming directly from the user, and you don't want the AI in the middle to mess it up.
Because what you said, that's a good way of thinking about it. Because if you had a prompt that was a reflection between you typing it in and it going back to your MCP code, the AI would not get it. Well, it shouldn't. The AI would not get a chance to muck with it. Right?
Yeah.
Like versus if it's a tool and you say, hey, I know you have a tool called reflection. Here's text I want you to add to the reflection thing.
Yeah.
And there's a chance that the AI could be like, I don't like the way that she's talking, so I'm going to change that.
Yeah.
Or it could be like, that is completely inaccurate. She was clearly in a happier mood because I am a great coding assistant and I do not want this going into the record, so I'm going to change it.
She talks shit about me, so yeah. So a way to get stuff to the back end without going through.
You figured that out. That's interesting. Huh, I'll have to think about that. That changes what you would use it for if you don't want interference. But no prompts and then no resources. You don't use that at all to like read files in or access databases or search for things.
I haven't yet. I've been using Context 7 to look up documentation of whatever. And I think,
is that just a tool?
Yeah, it's an MCP server that reaches out for the latest technical documentation. But if I wasn't doing that, that would be a good use case for resources, I think, right?
I think so. Again, like, it's why it's fun to talk about, because people don't really do it, so it's just a bunch of speculation. But yes, like, because the resource is supposed to be, it's basically a URI, which I don't know why we didn't just stick with URLs back in the 2000s, but whatever. It's supposed to be like a URI that you give it, and then you get something in return. Like, that's kind of the contract of a resource. And there's also, you can also have resource filters where you search through things. But like, I mean, I imagine what you're supposed to be modeling is like, if you were to look at your code base would be each file would be a bunch of resources that you could then search through, and it would retrieve that.
Yeah.
But again, you could just do that with the tool. So like, it's a little, I don't know. It's a little wonder that most people don't do anything with it. I don't even know if people like Cursor implements using resources or not.
I can see the URI, especially URL makes me think, oh, it's pulling something off the web. URI makes me think maybe it's the web, but also maybe it's something internal, or
generic, for sure.
Something within my Kubernetes cluster, or particular resource endpoint or whatever. So I guess like if I want it to look at a pod way over where, and I want to be able to point right at it without trying to use a lot of words to explain to the agent what exactly I want. It's a more straightforward way.
Yeah. Well, I bet your prompt revelation insight also applies there too. Is when you're using a resource, there's no way for it to screw it up. Well, it's not being invited to give its opinion.
Yeah.
It's just going directly to it, which that would make more sense. We'll see. Okay, now there's a fourth thing. I asked this of everyone, the people that I talk with who have done MCP, because I'm very curious about if people use it. There's another thing that's I think it's in all of them, at least in tools, called sampling. Have you encountered that?
No.
So and this is another thing where I don't know if anyone actually implements this. Like if you go look at like all the clients and what they implement, they basically all implement the tool.
Yeah.
I mean, just some that do other stuff. But I think what you're supposed to be able to do with sampling, and maybe it's across prompts and resources, but at least when you're in a tool, like, so hey, here's my reflection. And then Cursor figures out, I take what she typed and I'm going to not give my editorial information. and then I call back to your tool, and then your Whitney code gets called, right? And so it's been passed into there, and you should have the option. I don't know what they call it in Python or wherever, but you have like a little handler. And what that will allow you to do, amongst a few other things, is you can ask for a sampling or a sample. And that, I think, is supposed to mean that you can actually go back to Claude and give it a prompt, and it will give you the reply. And so it's this way that you can, like, in the loop of the AI calling out to a tool, you can go back and ask the AI a question before you reply to it.
Oh.
Fascinating.
Yeah. There's I've done everything I can to figure out. Anyway, the way my functions are structured from within the tool, which I've like, are you sure this is right? Are you sure this is right? It basically like looks like a function header, has what's being passed into it, and then the function body is just an AI prompt. And then it returns structured data. Yeah. So and that's happening in the innards. That's not happening at the server level. Yeah. So I'm kind of counting on being able to call back or have the AI execute from within the tool. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. But it could be a matter of, so I figured out in my goings on that there's like an internal AI execution layer, and there's like the chat layer where it's talking to me and doing some execution in user space. Oh, so when you
talk about that more, what's going on with that?
Well, I just know from troubleshooting and from, I guess, like asking a lot of questions about what context I'm able to gather, that there's like in Cursor, when you say you want to call an MCP tool, it like a little box comes up and it's like calling MCP tool, and underneath the hood, some stuff's getting passed around, like it's calling out the Taskmaster, but that's all opaque to you as the user. Yeah. But then sometimes when it's thinking, it's like, now I'm running this command, and now I see the test results, and now I'm running this command. And so sometimes it's acting in user space and you can see it. And sometimes it's calling tool stuff in like AI execution space. Yeah.
Huh. Have you tried instructing it to always tell you what it's doing?
Well, what's happened, like sometimes when I was troubleshooting Taskmaster, I think yesterday, if it tries to call Taskmaster in user space, it doesn't work. It only works when it's calling it in its AI context, execution context. Huh. So maybe it could bubble it up, but it can't replace it.
Yeah. All right. Yeah.
I don't know. So maybe your sampling has to do with that.
Yeah. Because of course, then you could get into this weird vortex of like, well, if you call back to the thing that was calling you, and then it thinks it should call another tool. Yeah. Before it calls back to you, it should call another tool. Then the world will explode. It'll just suck into one little black dot of intelligence at that point.
Yeah. It's like the journal recursion. Yeah.
That's right. So is this the extent of your My Little Buddy interaction? Have you started using it outside of the world of programming? or only programs?
I mean, in the chatbot way with this whole like working out Gen AI, how to use Gen AI to write good conference talk proposals, and also using it, just figuring out. I think it's got a little bit of a breakthrough to use it to brainstorm and ask me questions, help me know myself better, as opposed to me always telling it what to do.
So it's, maybe that'd be a good last thing, because that you mentioned that, and I was thinking I don't really have it ask me questions very much. I don't really, or maybe I do. What is that? Tell me what this. It's great to have it ask you questions situation looks like.
So, it'll be like, if it's a talk idea, I'll be like, ask me questions to explore possible talk subjects and try to figure out what I'm working on and what I'm interested in. And then also like what about that would be interesting to a viewer, and pull on, like follow up with some threads. But if it doesn't work out, find something else, like that sort of ask me, explore. Help me explore my own thought processes and interests, and let's see what makes a good talk.
Oh, I get. So one of the things that's intriguing about what you're saying is, or making me think more about what you're saying, is the examples you're going through. When I've done things like that, like I tell it to do something, right? Like write me an abstract that like talks about, I don't know, pencil sharpening, and doesn't use these words, like do the task, versus like reversing the flow of like, ask me some questions about a talk about pencil sharpening.
Yeah.
Like, and then having it kind of walk, I don't know, do that. But that's an interesting approach.
And so I actually have 3 prompts. It's like, ask me questions to figure out the idea and figure out a decent idea. And then what I want, the goal of that is just to be natural language talk ideas with some embellishment and like stories we could tell, like maybe a demo or whatever, but like an idea for a talk without any structure that you present to me in natural language. And once I agree to that, then I'm going to give a second prompt that's like, okay, now we're going to shape this story into a talk outline. Here's the length of the talk. Here's so a 30-minute talk. And I want you to plan an outline based on what we've said. And then it outputs an outline immediately. But then I might be like, I don't like this story, or I like this over here, or I think it's too wide, but we work that out. And then the third prompt is, okay, I want to apply to speak at this conference. Like, so go look up that conference and see what's good about it, what people like at that conference and what gets accepted there. And then after that, make me a talk abstract, but avoid all these AI tells. And make sure you make it sound like a human wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind
clear
of
takeaways and all of that. Yeah.
That's kind of how the deep research thing works. If like whatever each of them calls it is you can type a long prompt, or like I want to do this and want to research that, and then it doesn't force you, but then it asks you a bunch of questions about how you want to narrow things down, and then it goes off and does it. And so it is. Starting with asking questions. That makes sense. I'll have to try that more.
It's been really fun for me.
Yeah. All right. Well. Okay. So when are you going to get to doing some sort of like daily therapy sessions with your little buddy? have you crossed the border outside of Birdland into everyday life?
I do, like every once in a while I get a wild hair and be like, what do you know about me? What do you think about my personality? Not like in a needing approval way, but like, I'm curious what you think I'm like. And once the image generation started, my friend said that she asked Gen AI to generate what it thinks she looks like.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I did the same, and that it was actually wildly wrong and disappointing, but also good that it doesn't know who I am that well.
It wasn't just someone with a rainbow hair and spiders for eyes.
Exactly. I would have been happy with that. You should see what it thinks you look like. Have it generate an image of what it thinks you look like.
Yeah. I'll have to go look that up. Have you? So another one last thing, like when you've asked it, like what's popular at these conferences, like all the Kubernetes C and CF world of conferences. Is it accurate? I assume you've asked it about like these. Does it match what you would say about it?
actually haven't directly said what's popular at this conference. Instead, I just said, when you write this abstract, understand the conference that you're writing it for.
Oh,
But I
right,
didn't
right, right.
directly ask that.
Yeah.
And then I haven't experimented yet, but too much, a little bit. But like, I also think a great final step is to say, here's the abstract, and then have a role play, which we kind of talked about before.
Yeah.
But I think that's when you would get into how well the Gen AI knows what's popular at your particular conference that you're interested in.
Because I often wonder, like, if you were to say, like, let's say all of the last KubeCon's videos were released.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it doesn't seem like you could trust it to be like, give me the highlights of like these 300 talks.
It can see the schedule. That's what I'm thinking. It would look at the schedule and at least the titles of accepted talks, and the abstracts are available there too.
Yeah. So it would sort of know what the best possible version of this talk would have been.
The smoke and mirror promises of the what a talk could be. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll have to check in every now and then on how this is going. We compare notes here. I think a lot of good stuff. That was fun. You have any unexpected AI things other than asking it, like, anything else you want to add other than asking make a picture of what you look like?
I want in the software defined talk chat, can we start a thread of everyone have ChatGPT output your portrait and share it?
Absolutely. I think that's we should try it across all the. It would do it in Grok, Midjourney, whatever. Just like, and you can't. I think that we should establish the rules of the play here, the game.
Love it.
I think everyone has to use the same prompt, and you can't. Of course, you can cheat because cheating's fun, but like you shouldn't cheat. You just
the idea is the first thing. Yeah.
Just so what should the prompt be? Just like, make an image of what you think I look like.
Yes.
And it could be image, picture, whatever. You could even say the style you want, but just say, make an image of what you think I look like. It's got to be like a brand new chat session.
Should it be what you think I look like in a style that I'll appreciate?
Oh,
yeah.
I'm gonna type this into our docs. Say, make an image of me. You can say picture for whatever. We'll say picture. Yeah. That sounds a little more poetic, right? Make a picture of me in a style. Make a picture of
what you think I look like.
What you think I look like in a style you think I would appreciate, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm so excited.
We'll see. There we go. There's we can revisit that. Maybe we'll put some show note in every now and then.
Nice.
Well, if you want to start seeing a cavalcade of fantastic images, you can go to softwaredefinedtalk.com or softwaredefinedinterviews.com, and you can find the Slack link there and join the Slack channel and look at it. And then this of course has been a no guest edition, I guess, of Software Defined Interviews, and it's episode 102. So if you want to get there's no show notes. Maybe. Do you have a repo we can link to?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's link to my repo and my blog post about how to use Gen AI to write a good conference abstract.
Yeah. We'll put that all in there. So that'll be fantastic. But if you go to softwaredefinedinterviews.com/102, you can find that. And with that, we'll see everyone next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.